When you think of Rock Lee, what comes to mind? For many fans, it's that unforgettable moment in the Chunin exams when Lee dropped the weights from his ankles and revealed just how fast, just how dedicated, and just how powerful he really was. Rock Lee wasn't a genius. He wasn't born with incredible talent. He couldn't use ninjutsu, he couldn't use genjutsu, and in a world where those abilities defined a shinobi's worth, he was constantly ridiculed. And yet, through sheer willpower, training, and relentless determination, Rock Lee carved out a name for himself. He became the symbol of what it means to push beyond your limits, the underdog who proved that hard work could rival genius. Now let's put that against the Uchiha clan. The Uchihas were the opposite of Lee. They were geniuses by birth. The Sharingan gave them godlike perception, powerful genjutsu, and techniques that placed them among the strongest shinobi in the world. But along with that genius came arrogance, tragedy, and the curse of hatred. So here's the what if we're exploring. What if Rock Lee wasn't the boy with no talent? What if he was born into the Uchiha clan with the Sharingan at his disposal? This is one of those what-ifs that instantly changes everything, because Lee's very identity as a character is tied to his limitations. If we erase those, if we flip the script and make him one of the most talented shinobi by birth, then not only does his personal story shift, we reshape Naruto's entire world. Before we can reimagine Lee as an Uchiha, we have to pause and appreciate who he really was in the original story. Lee represents one of Naruto's deepest themes: effort versus talent. Where Naruto himself was the underdog in terms of social status, an orphan, a pariah hated by the villagers, Lee was the underdog in terms of skill. He simply couldn't perform the basic ninja arts that every child in the academy learned. No fireball, no transformation, no illusions, nothing. For most kids, that would have been the end of the road. They would have given up, settled into another role in the village, or lived with resentment. But not Rock Lee. He doubled down on what he could do. He became a taijutsu specialist, training his body beyond normal human limits, even unlocking the dangerous 8 inner gates. Think about that for a moment. In a world where bloodlines and natural genius usually decide your fate, Lee forged his own path. His fight against Gaara wasn't just a battle, it was a message. It told us that even someone with nothing could stand toe-to-toe with the strongest opponents. Lee's story resonated because it wasn't about destiny, it wasn't about prophecy, and it wasn't about some secret power hidden inside him. It was about sweat, tears, and endless training, and that's what made him inspiring. So if we now take that character, the one who proved hard work could rival genius, and we give him the ultimate genius bloodline, what happens to that message? Does it disappear? Does it transform? That's the emotional weight behind this what if. To really grasp the scale of this change, we need to revisit what the Uchiha clan represents. The Uchihas were one of Konoha's founding clans, second only to the Senju in terms of influence and power. Their Sharingan was one of the most iconic Kekkei Genkai in the series, capable of seeing through illusions, copying techniques, and eventually evolving into powers that could bend reality itself. But the Uchiha weren't just powerful, they were tragic. From Madara Uchiha's rivalry with Hashirama, to the massacre orchestrated by Itachi, to Sasuke's endless cycle of revenge, the Uchiha story is one of pain, hatred, and loss. Their genius often led them down dark paths, consumed by their emotions. Thematically, they were the opposite of Rock Lee. The Uchihas were born with talent, cursed by their emotions. Lee was born with no talent, blessed by his perseverance. So, putting Lee into the Uchiha clan is more than just giving him new abilities. It's merging two opposite philosophies into one character, and that creates fascinating possibilities. Now, you might be wondering, out of all the what-ifs in Naruto, why focus on this one? Why does imagining Rock Lee as an Uchiha matter? It matters because Lee's identity is unique. Most other what-ifs are about tweaking a powerful character. What if Itachi never killed the clan? What if Naruto wasn't a Jinchuriki? What if Sasuke stayed in the village? Those are important, but they're built on people who already had talent or destiny tied to them. Lee is different. He's not about destiny. He's about overcoming the lack of it. He's about proving you don't need to be born special to become special. So when we make him an Uchiha, we're not just changing his abilities, we're questioning whether Lee's philosophy even survives. If Lee has the Sharingan, does he still train 10 times harder than everyone else? If he can use ninjutsu and genjutsu, does he still look up to Guy as his ultimate mentor? If he's no longer the underdog, what kind of person does he become? This is why this alternate timeline is so compelling, because it forces us to ask, what defines Rock Lee more, his lack of talent or his unbreakable spirit? So let's set the stage. Imagine Konoha in this new reality. Rock Lee is born into the Uchiha clan. He's surrounded by cousins and siblings who are all seen as prodigies. As a child, he awakens his Sharingan, maybe even earlier than Sasuke did. Instead of being laughed at for having no ninjutsu, he's celebrated as another rising star of the clan. But here's where it gets interesting. Lee's personality doesn't change. He's still obsessive, still driven, still someone who trains harder than anyone else. Except now he's training while also having natural talent. That combination, hard work plus genius, is terrifying. In this world, Lee could become one of the strongest shinobi in history, rivaling not just Sasuke, but maybe even surpassing him. But with that, the ripple effects begin. Sasuke now grows up overshadowed not only by Itachi, but also by Lee. Naruto finds himself competing with two Uchiha geniuses instead of one. Guy's mentorship shifts from uplifting an underdog to restraining a prodigy. And the Uchiha's curse of hatred, it might never touch Lee, or it might consume him in ways we've never imagined. And that's just the setup. From this single change, Rock Lee being born into the Uchiha clan, the entire Naruto timeline begins to shift. From the Chunin exams to the rise of Akatsuki, from Itachi's truth to the Fourth Ninja War, Lee's presence reshapes everything. But before we dive into all those arcs, we need to ground ourselves in who Lee is and why he mattered so much in canon, because only then can we appreciate just how massive this what-if truly is. So let's take that journey, starting with Rock Lee as we know him and slowly reimagining what happens when the underdog becomes the genius. Imagine a child born not in a quiet, ordinary Konoha household, but in the heart of one of the most feared and respected clans in the village, the Uchiha. That child is Rock Lee. Right away, Lee's life takes on a very different tone. The Uchihas are known for their pride, discipline, and their expectation of genius. Every child is watched closely. How early they show skill, how fast they grasp the fundamentals of ninjutsu, how naturally they awaken the Sharingan. In this clan, talent isn't just celebrated, it's demanded. Now here's where things get fascinating. In canon, Lee struggled because he couldn't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, but as an Uchiha, people would expect him to excel in both, especially because the Sharingan is tied to their bloodline. So imagine the tension. Young Rock Lee, with his bowl cut and fiery determination, trying desperately to keep up with cousins who already show sparks of genius. At first, he's treated as the odd one out. His chakra control is rough. His attempts at fire-style jutsu flop. The adults whisper, "How could an Uchiha child be this clumsy?" For Lee, this hurts deeply. He's not just failing himself. He's failing the entire weight of the Uchiha name. But then comes the twist. He still awakens the Sharingan. Maybe it's not through natural brilliance, but through sheer emotional drive. In a sparring session, frustrated, desperate to prove himself, he unlocks the crimson glow of the Sharingan. Suddenly, the boy who couldn't keep up with ninjutsu can see every movement, every detail, every flaw in his opponent's form. The clan elders nod. Finally, the bloodline has spoken. For Lee, this is both a blessing and a curse. He now has the clan's acceptance, but in his heart, he still feels unworthy. He still wants to push his body, still wants to master taijutsu to its absolute limits, because unlike other Uchihas, Lee knows what it feels like to struggle. He knows what it means to fail, and that fuels him differently. Now picture this. A young Uchiha Rock Lee still crosses paths with Might Guy. This is crucial, because Guy is the reason Lee became who he was in canon. Without Guy, Lee might have drowned in insecurity. But here's the beauty of this what if. Guy doesn't just see Lee as the boy without ninjutsu. Instead, he sees something rarer, an Uchiha child who doesn't rely on his Sharingan. Guy notices how Lee trains, how he runs laps until his legs give out, how he insists on push-ups long after other kids quit. He sees a spark that isn't rooted in bloodline privilege, but in raw determination. So Guy becomes Lee's mentor all the same. The difference? Now Lee's training combines both worlds. He hones taijutsu like a man possessed, fueled by Guy's encouragement, but he also sharpens his Sharingan, not to spam genjutsu or copy flashy techniques, but to perfect his taijutsu. Every punch, every kick, every dodge becomes sharper because his Sharingan lets him analyze and correct his form in real time. Think about that. The deadliest taijutsu specialist in Naruto, but now with the foresight and perception of the Sharingan. That's not just dangerous, it's terrifying. This change ripples out into his childhood bonds. In canon, Lee's underdog nature made him bond with teammates like Tenten and Neji. As an Uchiha, though, he grows up closer to Sasuke. But it's not a simple friendship. Sasuke, still the clan prodigy, sees Lee as an oddball, too passionate, too loud, too un-Uchiha. Yet deep down, he also recognizes Lee's discipline. Sasuke respects results, and Lee produces results through sheer effort. Over time, this creates a rivalry. Sasuke, the genius who makes things look effortless, versus Lee, the grinder who turns effort into art. With Naruto, things change too. Instead of Naruto constantly trying to catch Sasuke, he now sees Lee as another rival. Naruto admires Lee's intensity, but also feels overshadowed because Lee has both the Sharingan and Guy's training. This triangle of rivalry, Naruto, Sasuke, Lee, completely reshapes the early story. And Neji? Oh, the rivalry with Neji becomes even more charged, because now Lee isn't just the dropout. He's an Uchiha, born with a prestigious name and the Sharingan, yet still chooses to fight Neji head-on with taijutsu. For Neji, who believes in destiny, this is confusing. Why would someone born with fate's gift throw it away to train like a commoner? Their fights become more than just battles. They become debates about fate, talent, and choice. The most interesting thing here isn't just the fights or rivalries. It's Lee's emotional arc. Born into the Uchiha clan, Lee carries their pride but rejects their arrogance. He grows up surrounded by talent but clings to effort. He has the Sharingan but chooses not to let it define him. In a way, he becomes a bridge between two worlds, the clan of geniuses and the world of underdogs. And this is where his story flips the Naruto themes on their head. In canon, Naruto represented hard work, Sasuke represented talent, and Lee represented extreme dedication. But in this timeline, Lee embodies both. He is the symbol of talent and effort united. That's not just a shift in character, it's a seismic change in the message of the story. The Ninja Academy is where every shinobi story begins, and for Rock Lee, this stage would be dramatically different as an Uchiha. In canon, Lee was overlooked, a boy mocked for his inability to use ninjutsu or genjutsu. His classmates saw him as weak, destined to fail. But here, the weight of the Uchiha name changes everything. From day one, people whisper about him. That's Rock Lee, the Uchiha kid with the weird haircut. Expectations are high, maybe impossibly high. And that's the first challenge. Every fire jutsu lesson, every chakra control drill, Lee struggles. He burns his eyebrows off trying to do fireball jutsu. He miscalculates hand seals. The teachers are polite but disappointed. His peers, especially the other Uchihas, snicker. They think he's proof that even a prestigious bloodline can produce failures. But then comes sparring class. And this is where everything flips. The moment Lee steps onto the mat, his raw taijutsu and relentless energy make him stand out. Add in his early awakening of the Sharingan, and suddenly the boy who couldn't mold chakra properly is dismantling opponents with speed and foresight. The teachers begin to realize Lee isn't failing, he's specializing. He's not going to be a ninjutsu prodigy. He's going to be something else entirely. The academy is also where Lee's early bonds form, and these relationships hit differently in this timeline. With Naruto, Naruto sees Lee as another loud, passionate outcast. But there's a twist. Unlike Naruto, Lee carries a clan name and a Sharingan. That stings. Naruto wants to be acknowledged, but how can he compete with someone who's already born with recognition? Still, Naruto is drawn to Lee's optimism. They become rivals, sometimes friendly, sometimes tense, pushing each other to work harder. With Sasuke, this is where things get really interesting. Sasuke grows up as the golden child, the prince of the Uchiha. But Lee challenges him in ways he doesn't expect. Lee can't perform ninjutsu as elegantly as Sasuke, yet in taijutsu drills, Lee often outpaces him. The Sharingan only sharpens Lee's edge. For Sasuke, who prides himself on being ahead of everyone, this is uncomfortable. Their rivalry starts here, planted in the academy, long before the clan massacre changes Sasuke's life forever. With other classmates, Lee's intensity makes him stand out. Shikamaru rolls his eyes at him. Kiba laughs at his haircut but secretly respects his work ethic. Hinata admires his determination. Even Sakura, who usually only notices Sasuke, can't help but be impressed when Lee trains until he collapses. He's eccentric, yes, but impossible to ignore. While Lee's academy life has sparks of friendship, there's also a darker shadow, the Uchiha clan itself. Other children expect Lee to be like Sasuke, cool, composed, effortlessly skilled. Instead, he's loud, awkward, and obsessed with training. To many, he doesn't fit the Uchiha image. Even within his clan, some see him as an embarrassment. The older Uchihas whisper, "Why waste time on taijutsu when he has the Sharingan?" But here's the beauty of Lee's character. He doesn't let this pressure break him. Instead, it fuels him. Every time someone doubts him, he doubles his training. Every time someone says, "You'll never match Sasuke," he pushes his body further. Slowly, he begins to carve out a reputation, not as a failed Uchiha, but as a different kind of Uchiha, one who refuses to conform. Though Lee officially meets Might Guy as his mentor later, the seeds are planted here. Imagine a young Lee training alone after class, sweat dripping as he kicks a wooden post until his legs bleed. Other kids laugh, but one man notices Guy. He sees the same fire in Lee's eyes that he once had, and while he can't formally mentor him yet, he throws him a thumbs up, a smile, maybe even a word of encouragement. For Lee, this is everything. He finally feels seen, not as an Uchiha, not as a failure, but as Rock Lee. That spark of recognition sets the stage for their future bond. Finally, we reach the academy graduation exams. In canon, Lee scraped by with taijutsu, barely managing to graduate, but in this timeline, it's different. While his ninjutsu remains clumsy, his Sharingan gives him just enough edge to compensate. In the clone jutsu test, he copies the instructor's movements perfectly, even if the clone itself looks wobbly. In sparring, he dismantles his opponent with speed, precision, and overwhelming effort. The result? Lee doesn't just pass. He passes with recognition. The teachers note his weaknesses, but also his unique strengths. They see him as someone unconventional, but undeniably promising. And so Rock Lee graduates, not as the forgotten dropout, but as the oddball Uchiha who carved his own path, a boy with crimson eyes and burning spirit ready to enter. After the academy exams, the newly minted genin await their team assignments. This moment is always filled with nervous anticipation. Who will you fight alongside? Who will you grow with? Who will shape your shinobi future? In canon, Rock Lee's placement onto Team Guy gave him a chance to blossom under Might Guy's eccentric but life-changing mentorship. But in this what if, his Uchiha heritage shifts the perception of him before the teams are even announced. Teachers debate. Should Lee, an Uchiha with a Sharingan, be placed on a high-profile team like Team 7 alongside Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke? Or would that create too much rivalry, two Uchihas on the same squad, each with vastly different temperaments? Or perhaps Lee belongs on a team where his unique blend of Sharingan foresight and taijutsu drive can balance out other talents. In the end, the academy leaders, likely influenced by Guy himself, decide Lee's spirit would thrive best under a mentor who values determination over pedigree. And so the path of fate remains. Lee is placed on Team Guy alongside Neji Hyuga and Tenten. But here, his presence brings a very different energy to the squad. Neji Hyuga, the prodigy of the Hyuga branch family, embodies genius shaped by fate. He's cold, calculating, and deeply entrenched in the philosophy that destiny is inescapable. Now imagine Neji sizing up his new teammate, an Uchiha. Not just any Uchiha, but one who openly rejects the clan's refined, dignified reputation in favor of wild training sessions and eccentric energy. Neji sees Lee as a contradiction, born into power yet behaving like an underdog. To him, Lee is wasting his gifts. But this is where sparks fly. Lee doesn't flinch at Neji's disapproval. Instead, he challenges it head-on. Maybe you think destiny decides everything, but I say effort decides who I am. Sharingan or no Sharingan, I'll prove that hard work can beat fate any day. For Neji, this is infuriating. How dare someone with a bloodline limit, the Sharingan no less, speak the language of effort? Yet at the same time, Lee's conviction gnaws at him. Their rivalry, which was already heated in canon, burns even hotter here. This rivalry becomes the heartbeat of Team Guy. Lee and Neji push each other constantly. Neji with his perfect Byakugan precision, Lee with his overwhelming energy and budding mastery of taijutsu, enhanced by Sharingan foresight. Neither wants to yield, and both grow sharper because of it. Then we have Tenten, often overlooked in canon, but vital in this dynamic. She's practical, disciplined, and focused on mastering weaponry. To her, Lee is both inspiring and exasperating. On one hand, she admires his dedication, hours of training until his knuckles bleed, refusing to quit no matter how many times he stumbles. On the other hand, his eccentric personality and loud declarations of youth test her patience. And now add in the fact that he's an Uchiha. Tenten can't help but roll her eyes. Of course, even the weird one is from a famous clan. But secretly she respects him even more. Unlike many Uchihas, Lee doesn't rest on his clan name. He trains harder than anyone, and he doesn't see himself as above her. In fact, Lee constantly encourages Tenten, cheering for her progress with the same fiery passion he applies to his own training. This bond lays the groundwork for a stronger team unity than in canon. Finally, we come to Might Guy, the heart and soul of Team Guy. Guy already has a soft spot for underdogs. In canon, he took Lee under his wing precisely because Lee couldn't use ninjutsu or genjutsu, recognizing that his spirit deserved nurturing. But in this timeline, Guy meets a very different Lee, one who has the Sharingan but chooses to rely primarily on his fists, sweat, and spirit. For Guy, this is almost poetic. You, Lee, you have been blessed with the Sharingan, yet you choose to walk the path of blazing effort. Truly, you embody the springtime of youth. Their bond forms instantly. Guy sees in Lee not just a student, but proof that hard work and passion can coexist with natural gifts. Lee, meanwhile, finally finds someone who understands him. Not as a failed Uchiha, not as a prodigy, but as Rock Lee, the boy who burns for progress. Their dynamic becomes legendary. Every morning starts with 500 push-ups, 1,000 laps around the training ground, and Guy's booming encouragement echoing across Konoha. Neji groans, Tenten sighs, but Lee, he matches his sensei step for step, tears streaming, declaring, "I will not lose to my youth, sensei." The eccentric mentor and eccentric student, this bond becomes even deeper than in canon because now it isn't born from pity or compensation. It's born from shared values, the belief that effort defines destiny. Team Guy's first missions, escorting merchants, chasing runaway pets, helping villagers, may seem trivial, but they lay the foundation for Lee's growth. With Neji, every mission becomes a contest. Who can spot danger first? Neji with his Byakugan or Lee with his Sharingan? Who can disable enemies faster? Neji's gentle fist or Lee's whirlwind kicks? Their rivalry sharpens them both. With Tenten, Lee often becomes her sparring partner, dodging a storm of kunai and shuriken while trying to close the distance. His reflexes, boosted by the Sharingan, make him an ideal opponent. This forces Tenten to refine her precision and strategy, while Lee learns to adapt under overwhelming pressure. With Guy takes them on extra training sessions, pushing Lee especially hard. Where others might see this as favoritism, the truth is Guy recognizes Lee's potential to become the bridge between natural talent and pure hard work, a living contradiction who can inspire the entire team. By the time Team Guy completes its early missions, their reputation is already growing. Neji's precision, Tenten's arsenal, and Lee's fiery taijutsu, enhanced by the Sharingan, make them one of the most balanced and unpredictable squads in Konoha. Despite his successes, Lee's journey on Team Guy isn't without inner conflict. Being an Uchiha means carrying expectations. Every time he activates the Sharingan, people see the clan before they see him. Some call him a prodigy, others mock him as the weird Uchiha who acts like Guy. Lee struggles with this identity. Does his power come from his clan's bloodline or from his sweat and effort? This duality defines his early genin days. He wants to prove that his spirit, not his lineage, is his true strength. And with Guy as his mentor, Neji as his rival, and Tenten as his teammate, Lee slowly learns to embrace both sides of himself. The formation of Team Guy isn't just a starting point, it's foreshadowing. Neji and Lee's rivalry will echo into the Chunin exams. Tenten's trust in Lee will play a bigger role in her development. Guy's mentorship will prepare Lee for choices that test not just his body, but his identity as both an Uchiha and an individual. In this timeline, Team Guy isn't just a side squad. With Lee's unique role, they become central players in the unfolding story of Konoha. The Chunin exams are a rite of passage, the place where rookies prove themselves and where Konoha showcases its young talent to the world. In canon, Rock Lee made a huge impression here. His fight with Gaara is still one of the most beloved moments in Naruto history, but in this alternate world, things start differently. When Team Guy enters, whispers spread through the crowd. That's Rock Lee, the Uchiha with the bowl cut. People expect him to show off dazzling fire techniques, flawless Sharingan prowess. Instead, Lee continues to rely primarily on his taijutsu, throwing the audience off. This immediately sets him apart. Other teams underestimate him, assuming he's eccentric or holding back. But that's exactly when Lee shines, surprising both friend and foe with just how effective his raw physical ability is when paired with the predictive powers of the Sharingan. The first test, the infamous written exam. Canon Lee struggled because bookwork wasn't his strength. Here, nothing changes. He still isn't the smartest in the room, but this time, the Sharingan gives him a subtle edge. By copying the micro-movements of his peers, glances, hand positions, pencil strokes, he pieces together answers without needing to cheat in the traditional sense. It's not perfect. Lee doesn't score flawlessly, but he does well enough to pass, and his sheer determination carries him through Ibiki's psychological pressure. When the final question arrives, whether you risk everything to keep going, Lee stands proudly declaring, "Even if I fail 1,000 times, I will take this test 1,000 more, because youth only ends when you give up." His words inspire other teams. earning him both admiration and ridicule, but ensuring Team Guy passes the first stage. The second stage plunges the genin into survival mode. The forest of death is where teams either bond or break. For Team Guy, Lee's Sharingan becomes a game changer. He spots ambushes early, reads enemy movements, and guides his team through traps with uncanny precision. Tenten relies on his calls to line up perfect long-range strikes. Neji bristles. His Byakugan is supposed to be the ultimate scouting tool, yet here's Lee keeping pace with him. Their rivalry deepens, every mission turning into a subtle contest of who can protect the team better. During one ambush, Lee unleashes his trademark speed and taijutsu, but this time, combined with Sharingan foresight, he's almost untouchable. Enemies swing and miss as Lee dodges just before their strikes land. Then he counters with devastating kicks that send attackers flying. His teammates can't deny it anymore. Lee isn't just a hard worker, he's a prodigy of a different sort. But Lee himself doesn't see it that way. After the fight, he kneels, panting, fists clenched. "This isn't enough. If I rely on these eyes alone, I will never surpass the limits of my body. I must keep pushing." That moment defines him, not using the Sharingan as a crutch, but as a tool sharpened by effort. And now we arrive at the heart of it all, the preliminaries, where Lee faces Gaara. In canon, this fight was one-sided at first, Lee's speed overwhelming Gaara's sand, only for Gaara's defense to prove nearly impenetrable until Lee removed his weights and opened the gates. The emotional weight of that fight came from Lee proving his worth despite his limitations. But in this timeline, things escalate. The match begins the same way. Lee rushes forward, Gaara's sand blocking each strike. The crowd murmurs, unimpressed, an Uchiha who can't break through. But then Lee activates his Sharingan, and suddenly the tide shifts. He reads the sand's movements, slipping through tiny openings, landing glancing blows. Gaara narrows his eyes, realizing this opponent is sharper than expected. Guy gives the signal, and Lee drops his weights. The arena shakes as his speed skyrockets. The Sharingan tracks Gaara's sand shield with uncanny precision, letting him slip through defenses even faster. The combination is terrifying. Raw speed, predictive eyes, relentless taijutsu. Gaara is forced on the defensive like never before. The crowd erupts. An Uchiha fighting with taijutsu. What is this madness? But then comes the turning point. Lee, despite his power, still hits the wall of Gaara's absolute defense. No matter how fast, no matter how sharp, Gaara's sand protects him, and just like in canon, Lee pushes further, opening the inner gates. Here, though, the emotional core shifts. It's not just about proving a failure can stand tall. It's about proving that even someone born into privilege, the Uchiha name, the Sharingan, can choose the path of effort. Lee demonstrates that the will to train harder than anyone else can transform natural talent into something transcendent. The battle ends in similar tragedy. Gaara's counterattack shatters Lee's body, leaving him gravely injured. But the weight of the fight feels different. The crowd doesn't just see an underdog, they see an Uchiha who redefined what being an Uchiha means. Even Gaara, in his cold silence, feels something stir. Lee's fight with Gaara doesn't just impact Team Guy, it ripples outward, especially to Naruto and Sasuke. For Naruto, watching Lee pour everything into his taijutsu, combining it with the Sharingan, lights a fire under him. If someone with natural gifts can work that hard, then Naruto has no excuse. It deepens his resolve to master the Rasengan and to carve his own path. For Sasuke, the effect is even sharper. Seeing another Uchiha, one so different from himself, unlock speed and power through effort, gnaws at him. Sasuke, who constantly feels overshadowed by others, now has to reckon with a rival who carries the same bloodline but embodies a completely different philosophy. This sets the stage for future clashes, not just of strength, but of ideals. After the preliminaries, Lee lies in the hospital, his body broken. Guy stays by his side, unwavering. Neji, usually cold, visits quietly, unsettled by Lee's willingness to risk everything despite having natural gifts. Tenten cries, not because he lost, but because she saw how much he gave. For Lee, the hospital bed is another test. He stares at his bandaged arms and thinks, if I cannot fight with ninjutsu, and my body fails me, what am I? Am I truly an Uchiha? Or am I Rock Lee, the boy who never gave up? This question becomes the core of his character moving forward. Unlike Canon Lee, who struggled with being less than, Uchiha Lee struggles with identity. Is his strength his own, or the legacy of his clan? Can he reconcile effort and talent, or will he always feel torn between them? The Chunin exams in this timeline don't just mark his rise, they mark the beginning of his greatest inner conflict. The Chunin exams end with Orochimaru marking Sasuke, Gaara spiraling, and Konoha shaken by invasion, but Lee's impact lingers. The world has witnessed an Uchiha who defied the stereotype. Naruto and Sasuke both carry new motivations sparked by his example. Neji's destiny-bound worldview is beginning to crack, and Guy knows more than ever that Lee's journey will shape the future of Konoha. The aftermath sets Lee on a path not just of recovery, but of redefinition. From here, every arc will test whether he can truly balance the weight of his clan with the fire of his youth. In canon, Lee barely scraped by with teamwork and trust during the infamous first phase, but now, things play out differently. The moment Ibiki announces the rules, Lee knows the test isn't about knowledge, it's about deception and observation. Normally Lee would panic, but here he activates his Sharingan. Suddenly he's able to track pen movements, eye flickers, and subtle cues from other test takers. He doesn't even need to copy directly. He can cross-reference multiple answer sheets to avoid suspicion. What's more, his clan heritage means examiners watch him more closely, waiting for him to slip. But Lee's determination, combined with his sharp visual prowess, makes him nearly flawless. For the first time, Lee doesn't just survive the first exam, he dominates it. And Naruto notices. The boy who struggles with academics stares at Lee in awe, half jealous, half inspired. Their rivalry deepens. The second phase is where Lee's Uchiha bloodline really shines. The forest of death is filled with ambushes, traps, and high-stakes survival. Taijutsu, Sharingan combo. When enemy genin attempt sneak attacks, Lee's Sharingan reads their movements like an open book. His raw speed and strength make short work of ambushes, while his endurance allows him to push further than most. Team dynamic. Neji analyzes strategy. Tenten provides range support, but it's Lee who acts as the vanguard. His reckless bravery combined with foresight turns their team into a near unstoppable unit. Other teams actively avoid them. Encounter with Gaara's team. In canon, Lee only truly clashes with Gaara in the prelims, but here, fate draws them together early. Team Guy briefly crosses paths with Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari. Gaara's killing intent freezes the air. Lee steps forward, not with fear, but with fire in his eyes. He doesn't fight him yet, but the first sparks of their rivalry ignite here. Gaara mutters, "Another Uchiha?" But what unnerves him is that Lee doesn't look at him with arrogance, only pure determination. That unsettles Gaara more than Sasuke's cool pride ever did. Ah, the moment everyone waits for, Lee's legendary fight with Gaara, but now it's amplified. Opening moves. Instead of charging recklessly, Lee uses his Sharingan to gauge Gaara's sand defenses. Every twitch, every grain shift, Lee tracks it. He pushes Gaara harder, faster, earlier than in canon. Weight removal, Sharingan precision. When Lee drops his training weights, the crowd gasps just like before. But this time, his speed combined with predictive vision makes him even more terrifying. He doesn't just barely dodge Gaara's sand, he anticipates it perfectly. Every strike is sharper, every dodge more calculated. Primary Lotus Sharingan tracking. Lee lands devastating hits, but his Sharingan allows him to better control the timing of the lotus. Gaara takes heavier damage before his sand armor saves him. The turning point. Of course, Gaara's gourd sand ultimately overwhelms Lee. The Sharingan helps, but Lee isn't invincible. His body pays the price for pushing the 8 gates. Still, this version of Lee lasts longer, pushes Gaara closer to desperation, and earns even more respect from the audience, including the proctors and Hokage. What changes most? Gaara's impression. Instead of pitying Lee as another weakling crushed, he recognizes him as a terrifying opponent, an Uchiha who doesn't rely solely on ninjutsu, but on sheer will and strength. This fight changes more than just Lee's fate. It shifts the development of his peers. Sasuke. Watching Lee push Gaara to his limits leaves Sasuke rattled. In canon, he sees Lee as a rival only in taijutsu. Now Lee has the Sharingan too. Sasuke feels threatened, insecure, and driven to accelerate his pursuit of power. The seeds of envy toward Lee grow. Naruto, meanwhile, sees Lee's determination as proof that effort matters, even if you're an Uchiha. Instead of discouraging him, it lights a fire under him. He vows to stand on that same stage, not just as a sidekick, but as someone who can match both Lee and Sasuke. In canon, Lee's fight with Gaara leaves him crippled, nearly ending his ninja career. Here, the injury still happens. Gaara's sand crushes his bones and Lee collapses. But because of the Sharingan, his timing and defenses mitigate some of the damage. He's still critically injured, but not as irreparably broken. This has 2 huge consequences. Guy's despair is shorter. Guy still breaks down, but with hope. Tsunade later finds his recovery more achievable. Lee's spirit burns hotter. Instead of despair, Lee views his injury as yet another obstacle. The Uchiha pride inside him refuses to let him fall behind. Thus, the Chunin exams cement Rock Lee not as the underdog failure, but as one of the most promising and most dangerous genin of his generation. The Chunin exams end in disaster. Orochimaru unleashes his plan, and the invasion of Konoha begins. Lee, freshly injured from his battle with Gaara, should have been out of commission, but this is Rock Lee. We know he wouldn't sit on the sidelines while his village burned. Despite the pain coursing through his body, he rises. He doesn't care about orders, about doctors telling him to stay still. His Uchiha blood and his unwavering spirit drive him forward. Lee versus Sound Genin. While the main battles rage, Lee intercepts invading Sound Shinobi who threaten civilians. Even half-crippled, his Sharingan allows him to anticipate movements and compensate for his weakened body. The fight is messy. Every strike hurts him as much as it hurts them. But his presence saves lives. The Gaara Clash. Round 2. During the chaos, Naruto and Gaara inevitably clash in the forest. But this time, Lee forces himself to join. Even broken, he refuses to let Naruto face Gaara alone. When Gaara sees him, battered and limping, yet still standing with crimson Sharingan eyes, his rage spikes. Why won't this boy fall? Lee doesn't last long against Gaara's full transformation, but his interference gives Naruto the window he needs to unleash the power of the Nine Tails. In this timeline, Naruto's victory is as much Lee's as his own. Hiruzen Sarutobi falls at Orochimaru's hands, and the village is shaken. For Lee, the impact is personal. The Hokage was one of the few elders who encouraged Lee's individuality despite his struggles with ninjutsu. Losing him means losing a figure of quiet support. But instead of despair, Lee feels something sharper: responsibility. He realizes the will of fire isn't just about being strong. It's about protecting others, even when you're broken. This realization cements Lee's transformation from eccentric underdog to a shinobi with the weight of legacy on his shoulders. Here's where things get truly complicated. The Uchiha clan in this timeline hasn't yet been wiped out. We'll handle that divergence more in Section 8. But tensions between the clan and the village leadership are boiling. Rock Lee stands at a strange crossroads. To the clan elders, Lee is an embarrassment. His eccentricity and obsession with taijutsu tarnish the Uchiha's image of perfection. Yet after the Chunin exams, they can't ignore his strength. Whispers begin. Maybe this boy could be molded into a weapon for the clan. To the village leadership, Lee is both hope and risk. An Uchiha with the will of fire burning so brightly could be the bridge between the clan and Konoha. But what if he's pulled into the Uchiha's brewing rebellion? Lee himself doesn't care for politics, he just wants to grow stronger, but unknowingly his existence is shifting the balance of power. Lee's injuries still haunt him after the invasion. Even with his Sharingan compensating for his weakened body, the doctors tell him the same truth. Pushing further could cripple him permanently. Guy's heartbreak. Guy visits Lee in the hospital, devastated. He feels like he failed his student by letting him fight Gaara, by not protecting him better. The sight of Lee bandaged and broken tears him apart. But Lee, ever defiant, gives him a thumbs up and says, "Guy-sensei, if I can't walk, I'll crawl. If I can't crawl, I'll drag myself. Nothing will stop me." Tsunade's role. When Tsunade is brought back to Konoha, Lee becomes one of her first major patients. His case tugs at her heart. The boy is reckless, stubborn, and desperate to keep fighting. Against all odds, she sees a reflection of her younger brother Nawaki and of Naruto's indomitable spirit. She agrees to operate. In canon, this is a miracle chance. In this timeline, his Uchiha physiology gives Tsunade slightly more leeway. His body heals just a bit more resiliently. The surgery is still risky, but the odds tilt in his favor. When the dust settles from the Konoha crush, the village mourns, but also rebuilds. For Lee, it's a turning point. He's no longer just the odd Uchiha or the taijutsu specialist. He's now a hero of the invasion, remembered for standing even when broken. His rivalry with Gaara is cemented not just as a battle of strength, but of ideology. Willpower versus hatred, persistence versus despair. His bonds with Naruto and Sasuke deepen in new ways. Naruto sees him as proof that destiny doesn't define you. Sasuke sees him as yet another shadow he must overcome. Most importantly, Lee's flame burns hotter than ever. His Uchiha eyes see the path ahead, and his taijutsu spirit refuses to let him falter. He knows storms are coming, Orochimaru, the Akatsuki, and the growing darkness in Sasuke. But instead of fear, he feels resolve. For the first time, Rock Lee is no longer chasing recognition. He's standing at the heart of Konoha's future. In canon, the Uchiha massacre is one of the most tragic and defining moments of the entire Naruto series. Itachi, under orders from Konoha's leadership and with guidance from Obito, wipes out his entire clan to prevent an uprising. Only Sasuke is spared, forever cursed with vengeance. But in this alternate timeline, things aren't so simple. Rock Lee's presence in the clan complicates everything. He is an Uchiha by blood, but his obsession with taijutsu makes him stand apart. He doesn't embody the genius of the Sharingan the way Sasuke or Itachi do, but his victories in the Chunin exams and his heroism during the Konoha crush prove he's no weak link. The younger generation of Uchihas, Sasuke, Lee, and others, are looked upon with both pride and expectation. Some elders whisper, "Perhaps Rock Lee's fire can unite us. Perhaps the boy can be a rallying point against the village." Meanwhile, the village leadership grows uneasy. A passionate, unpredictable Uchiha who inspires the will of fire in others. He could either bridge the gap between clan and village or become the spark that ignites rebellion. In short, Lee becomes the variable Itachi cannot ignore. For Itachi, the massacre was never about hatred. It was about preventing war, about protecting Sasuke, and about carrying the burden of his clan's sins. But now, with Lee in the picture, his decision is heavier. On one hand, Lee embodies everything good about the clan's future. He's proof that an Uchiha can walk a different path, not bound by hatred but lifted by perseverance. On the other hand, Lee is unpredictable. His optimism could inspire peace, or fuel rebellion if the elders sway him. When Itachi meets with Shisui's memory in his thoughts, the words echo differently. Protect the village, protect the future. But what is the future now that Rock Lee burns so brightly? Here's where the divergence becomes massive. In this timeline, the massacre doesn't unfold as cleanly as it does in canon. Itachi still receives his orders, Obito still lurks in the shadows, ready to assist. But when Itachi moves to strike, he hesitates. Lee's absence on the night. Lee isn't home. Still recovering from Tsunoda's surgery, he's spending the night in Konoha's hospital ward. This single accident changes everything. He is spared, not by design, but by chance. Sasuke's survival. As in canon, Itachi spares Sasuke deliberately, staging the horror to push him towards strength. But now, when the sun rises, there are not one but two surviving Uchiha children, one burdened with hatred, the other burning with unbreakable will. The massacre rocks Konoha, but its aftermath unfolds differently. Sasuke. The trauma hits him just as hard as in canon, but this time he isn't alone. Lee becomes both a brother and a rival, someone who shares his bloodline, his grief, but not his despair. Sasuke's hatred festers, but it's constantly contrasted by Lee's refusal to succumb. Lee. For Lee, the massacre is shattering. His clan, the family that rejected him, mocked him, and yet still defined him, is gone. He mourns them deeply, but he refuses to carry hatred. Instead, he vows to honor them by becoming the strongest Uchiha who ever lived, through taijutsu, through spirit, and through the will of fire. The village. The elders see danger. Two surviving Uchihas instead of one, that's double the risk. Danzo in particular pushes hard. We must keep them under watch, both of them, especially the eccentric one. His spirit may rally others. Naruto Sakura. For Naruto, Lee's survival is inspiring, proof that even in tragedy hope can live. For Sakura, the presence of both Sasuke and Lee complicates her bonds. She now sees two Uchihas walking opposite paths, one into darkness, one into light. This divergence sets up the central philosophical clash of the entire alternate story. Sasuke embodies the curse of hatred, driven by vengeance against Itachi. Lee embodies the flame of youth, determined to rise above tragedy through willpower and bonds. The two boys become foils to each other in a way even more profound than canon. Where Naruto once chased Sasuke alone, now he watches both, the brother who falls into darkness and the brother who refuses to. And for Itachi, far away in the shadows, the knowledge that both his younger brothers survived haunts him. Did he make the right choice? Did he protect the future or doom it to conflict between light and shadow? By the time the dust settles, the Naruto world is already altered. The Akatsuki now track two Uchihas instead of one. Both boys become targets, though for different reasons. Orochimaru's obsession shifts. Instead of Sasuke alone, he now views Lee as an even more tempting vessel, an Uchiha with indomitable will and taijutsu mastery. Naruto's journey changes. His promise of a lifetime may now extend not just to Sasuke, but to keeping both his Uchiha friends together. The massacre is no longer a story of one survivor chasing hatred. It is now a tale of two survivors standing at a crossroads, one looking back at the darkness, the other marching forward into the light. 2.5 years pass. Naruto returns from training with Jiraiya, Sakura emerges as Tsunade's apprentice, and Konoha braces for new threats. But in this timeline, their bonds are already different. Naruto's motivation. In canon, his drive is centered on rescuing Sasuke, but here he has two brothers of the Uchiha line. His mission becomes twofold: stop Sasuke from falling into darkness and help Lee shoulder the crushing expectations placed upon him. Naruto sees Lee as living proof of perseverance, but he also worries that Lee's idealism will get him killed. Sakura's growth. Sakura trains just as hard under Tsunade, but emotionally she now balances between two Uchihas. She worries for Sasuke's descent into hatred, but also admires Lee's optimism and selflessness. This duality pushes her maturity earlier. She realizes that she must be more than just the one waiting, and so her resolve hardens sooner than in canon. Kakashi's burden. With two Uchihas under his care, Kakashi feels the shadow of Obito's death heavier than ever. He becomes more proactive as a teacher, determined not to fail another generation. The Akatsuki strike early, targeting Gaara to extract Shukaku. Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, and Lee head out as the new Team 7. Lee's presence changes everything. When they face Deidara, Lee's Sharingan allows him to track the clay bombs far more effectively than in canon. His taijutsu speed forces Deidara onto the defensive. Naruto's rage still bursts out when Gaara falls, but Lee tempers him, reminding him of focus. Gaara's rescue. After Chiyo's sacrifice revives Gaara, he shares a quiet moment with Lee. Their rivalry has matured into respect. Gaara admits, "You showed me a path beyond hatred." Lee, teary-eyed, simply tells him, "And you showed me the way to fighting demons." This moment cements Lee's role not just as Naruto's rival, but as a broader symbol of resilience across villages. When Yamato and Sai join the team, dynamics are different. Sai's skepticism. Sai doesn't just question Naruto's obsession with Sasuke. He questions why Konoha put so much faith in Rock Lee, the eccentric Uchiha. But as missions progress, Sai is stunned by Lee's sincerity. Unlike Sasuke, Lee's warmth breaks through Sai's emotional walls faster. Yamato's perspective. As someone who saw the darkness of experiments en route, Yamato admires Lee's optimism. But he also warns Kakashi, "That boy's fire burns so brightly, but flames can consume too." Here lies one of the biggest divergences. In canon, Orochimaru fixates entirely on Sasuke as his perfect vessel, but now, Lee as a temptation. Orochimaru sees Lee as the ultimate contradiction, an Uchiha who rejects ninjutsu for taijutsu, yet still wields the Sharingan with terrifying precision. His indomitable will makes him an even more tempting body than Sasuke. Orochimaru's words echo, "A flame that never dies, I must possess it." Tension between brothers. Orochimaru manipulates Sasuke, but also hints at Lee's wasted potential. Sasuke begins to see Lee not just as a rival, but as a living reminder of the path he didn't choose, light instead of shadow. This creates a rift deeper than canon. Sasuke isn't just angry at Naruto, he's angry at Lee too. When Naruto and his team finally encounter Sasuke after Orochimaru's hideout, the confrontation is far sharper. Naruto's plea. Naruto begs Sasuke to return, as always. But this time, he also points at Lee. "Look at him! He lost the same family, the same clan, and he still protects the village. Why can't you?" Sasuke's rage. These words cut deeper than any jutsu. To Sasuke, Lee is an unbearable mirror. How dare his fool of a brother claim to understand the pain of the Uchiha, and yet walk around smiling. His fury at Lee eclipses even his rivalry with Naruto. Lee's response. Lee doesn't fight with hatred. He tells Sasuke plainly, "You don't need hatred to honor them. You need love, and I'll prove it to you with my fists." Their clash is ferocious. Lee's Sharingan and taijutsu push Sasuke harder than expected. Though Sasuke ultimately escapes, he leaves with a scar, both physical and emotional, from facing his brother's blazing optimism. With two Uchihas in play, the Akatsuki reshuffle their strategies. Itachi's conflict. Itachi keeps a closer eye on Lee than in canon. He can't bring himself to harm him, yet he dreads what Lee's fire might ignite in Sasuke. His internal suffering doubles. Two brothers, two futures, both his responsibility. Obito's schemes. Tobi sees opportunity. Sasuke is hatred, Lee is hope. If both survive, their eventual clash could awaken power beyond imagination. Secretly, Obito encourages their rivalry, setting the stage for the Fourth War. Pain's perspective. Nagato views Lee as a contradiction to his philosophy of pain. If people like Lee exist, who can turn tragedy into strength without hatred, then perhaps his worldview isn't absolute. This plants a seed of doubt he won't confront until later. As arcs roll forward, Sasori, Haiden, and Kakuzu pain, Lee's presence changes the emotional balance of Team 7. Naruto, his bond with Lee deepens. He realizes they are both destiny breakers. Naruto, the child of prophecy, Lee, the Uchiha who rejected hatred. Together they inspire each other to keep moving forward. Sakura. With Lee and Sasuke representing light and dark, Sakura grows into a more decisive role. Her goal isn't just bring Sasuke back. It's to support Lee so he never burns out while still holding faith for Sasuke. Lee matures into more than comic relief. He becomes the moral compass of Team 7, constantly reminding them that shinobi life isn't just about jutsu or bloodlines. It's about will. His fights inspire allies, terrify enemies, and create ripples across every village. By the time we approach the Fourth Great Ninja War, the entire stage is set differently. Two Uchihas stand on opposite sides. Lee, the flame of youth, and Sasuke, the curse of hatred. Naruto's growth accelerates, driven by his dual promise. Save Sasuke, protect Lee. The Akatsuki's pursuit becomes more frantic. Two Sharingan heirs means double the danger. Orochimaru plots relentlessly, torn between which Uchiha he desires more. In this timeline, Shippuden isn't just the story of Naruto chasing Sasuke. It becomes a tale of two brothers diverging while Naruto and Sakura struggle to keep both bonds intact. The final question of this entire thought experiment is simple yet profound. What does the legacy of Naruto's world look like if Rock Lee were an Uchiha? By now, we've explored his childhood, his clan identity, the Chunin exams, his rivalry with Naruto and Sasuke, the threat of the Akatsuki, the Fourth Great Ninja War, and everything in between. But legacies are not built on battles alone. They are built on the meanings behind them. One of the most fascinating outcomes of Lee's altered path is the possibility that he could have been a true candidate for Hokage. In canon, Naruto and Sasuke stood as the central figures, their destinies shaped by prophecy and lineage. But an Uchiha Rock Lee represents something unprecedented, the merger of sheer hard work and innate genius. Imagine a Lee who can both master the 8 gates and awaken the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, or even the Rinnegan. Unlike other Uchihas consumed by vengeance, Lee would be grounded in his values of perseverance, discipline, and optimism. His potential to inspire not just Konoha, but the entire shinobi world could rival even Naruto's charisma. Would Lee have surpassed Naruto in influence? Possibly not, but he would have been a figure of equal magnitude, someone children in the next generation look up to, not just as a genius by blood, but as a genius by effort. The Uchiha clan in canon is marked by tragedy, mistrust, and cycles of hatred. Lee's presence alters that narrative entirely. Instead of being remembered as a cursed clan doomed to self-destruction, the Uchihas would have a new symbol of hope, Rock Lee Uchiha. Where Itachi embodied sacrifice, Sasuke embodied vengeance, and Madara embodied ambition, Lee would embody redemption and resilience. His existence proves that the Uchiha can rise above their history, using their gifts not for destruction but for progress. Future Uchihas in this alternate world would inherit not just the Sharingan but also Lee's legacy of tireless hard work. With Lee replacing Sasuke's darker trajectory, Team 7's journey would remain balanced. Naruto still grows into a hero, Sakura still finds her strength, and Kakashi still fulfills his role as mentor, but they are no longer broken by betrayal. Instead, they become a model of unity, the perfect example of how bonds can lift individuals higher than destiny alone. Lee's rivalry with Naruto would continue to fuel both of them, ensuring that neither grows complacent. Together, they would be unstoppable. From the Akatsuki to the Fourth Great Ninja War, Lee's presence as an Uchiha doesn't erase the conflicts, but it reframes them. Where Naruto's story in canon is about healing broken bonds, this alternate history becomes a story about strength through unity. Madara and Obito's philosophies of despair would face an even stronger counterforce, not just Naruto's belief in bonds, but Lee's example of perseverance within the very clan they corrupted. Their ideology of Uchiha weakness would be shattered by Lee's life itself. In the end, Rock Lee Uchiha would represent the perfect blend of two opposing forces: hard work, his original defining trait; innate genius, the natural gift of the Sharingan. Instead of negating one another, they amplify each other, proving that destiny and effort are not mutually exclusive. They are strongest when combined. This duality would ripple through generations, changing how shinobi view strength. No longer is greatness defined by bloodline alone, nor by grit alone, but by the harmony of both. In this alternate universe, Rock Lee as an Uchiha transforms the shinobi world story from one dominated by tragedy into one shaped by hope. His presence doesn't erase struggle, but it redefines what victory means. The Uchiha clan becomes a clan of inspiration, not suspicion. Naruto finds not just a rival, but a partner who embodies everything he believes in. The ninja world learns that greatness is not only inherited, it is built step by step, kick by kick, gate by gate. When future generations tell the story of Rock Lee Uchiha, they don't just remember him as a warrior. They remember him as the shinobi who proved that effort and destiny together could change the world. And that is his legacy.